Hey magical friends, it is time for some more Tales of Middle-earth magical goodness, and I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about some deck construction today. So stay tuned, follow along with us, and we are going to put together ourselves a little Gimli and Legolas deck. Hi everybody, welcome back. So thanks for joining your Sorting Sorceress today. And we're going to do something really fun, actually. Bill, my husband, challenged me to put together a Gimli Legolas deck for him. So I sat down, had a crack at all my sorting glory, and tried to put together a thoughtful deck that I think will be fun for him to play. And, you know, any excuse to put cards in his hand to encourage him to play Magic with me is a win-win for everybody. So I thought I would show you a little bit of what I kind of put together for this to see how we could make this fun and a really great deck for Bill to play. Obviously, my parameters to start with is it had to include Gimli and it had to include Legolas. So my thought process literally started with that. I pulled all my red cards, all my green cards, and my artifact cards together, looked through them. My kind of approach to putting a deck together will start with what kind of colors do I want to run, right? And so the color combo we have here is red-green, and that is AKA Gruel. So I narrow down what I'm looking at in order to kind of help keep focus for what we want to do. I pulled the Legolas and Gimli cards out to the side because I knew I wanted to include them, and then I will make a first pass through the stacks of cards to think what would be cool and what seems within the realm of reason, right? Because it's when you have lots of cards, and as evidenced by my 3 set booster boxes of Lord of the Ring cards, there is a lot of cards. So you're working with a stack of cards about this big, and you got to narrow it down because we're going for about a 60 card deck in this. Obviously, we're playing at home. It's a 60 card deck is a standard legal deck, but you can run more cards than that, especially if you're playing casually at home. But Bill prefers to keep his deck right at that 60 card sweet spot. And there is a method to that madness, because the more cards you go into the deck, the more you're diluting the likelihood of pulling the things that you need to be able to make your decks run efficiently. So something to take into account when you're making a fun build. But I went through each one of those color choices, pulled out the things that I thought were really cool and would make sense. And this is the world of Dawn, where I tend to get very focused on the theming, and I will not run, like, because this is clearly a good guy deck, I really struggle with using a card that is a bad guy by nature, but it runs with the color combo that you need to do, because thematically it doesn't work. So again, this is where I struggle a little bit. Sometimes things don't become as competitive maybe as they could be if you played with incorporating all of those cards like that. But from a thematic approach, I think I built something that's really fun. So hopefully Bill will agree. But I thought we'll take a run through the cards that I chose to include in here. So I have these in order by the mana cost. So when you are putting together a deck, I like to lay everything out on the table, and I will do a video specifically talking about what that looks like another time. But when you lay out your cards based on their cost, and so what you're looking at is called your mana curve. And that is, you want to see a small amount of cards at the really low end of cost and a small amount of cards at the really high end of cost. And you want more of everything else to be in between. And it generally should be kind of like an up-down. You should escalate a little bit at the beginning and then taper off at the end, because it gets very tempting. And I can tell you, especially when we first started playing Magic and I taught my young boys at the time to play, my son Benjamin was super enthusiastic enthusiastic and very excited about every big stompy creature that he could find. Therefore, he wanted to play them in every deck that he was building. And he would end up with a pile of cards that were so expensive that when he was playing in the game, he'd get stuck with all of these high mana value cards in his hand that he couldn't play, and it gets very frustrating and tempers flare. So it's a learning process for that with people, but that's why it's really important to do your build and kind of look at what that mana curve looks like to make sure that the deck is going to run well and be fun to play. All right, I digress. So back into what we picked. So starting off as a 1-drop cost, I've got a Rorim Lancer here. He's a 1/1, but what I think is cool is he's got Menace. And so keyword Menace means that he can't be blocked by one creature. It takes at least 2 creatures to block against him, which at a 1/1 isn't like the biggest deal in the world. It gets more important when it's something that is more big and stompy later. But he's got the ability that when he dies, the ring tempts you. So it's going to generate that ring tempt ability that's got 4 levels in gameplay and gives you different buffs and special abilities as that happens. So I'm running multiple copies of him here. So I've got 2 of those. So I've got 2 in the 1-drop spot, and now we're already up to 2 drops. So you can see I didn't put a whole lot in there. It's nice to have a couple things, especially if you're lucky enough to draw them early and get them out on the board earlier. But you don't want it to be the only thing you have, because obviously the 1/1 is not that tough, and you need to be able to get more meat and potatoes out on the board. So now I've gotten into the Lothlorien Lookout, and so we've got ourselves our first elf sighting, right? So he's got, whenever he attacks, you scry 1. So that's awesome. Gives you the ability to take a look at what's coming up next on your deck. Now, one of the coolest cards that I have found lately is this Erebor Flamesmith. So he is a dwarf. So here's Herald to, Gimli on this one. But he's got, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Erebor Flamesmith deals 1 damage to each opponent. Let me tell you how quickly that gets bonkers, right? I've been playing a lot of Magic on Arena lately, and when you can run this card, it is so fun and gets so nasty. And it feels that way when it's played against you as well, because the damage just happens super fast. And so, because anytime you're casting one of those other instant and sorcery things on top of dealing with whether this guy's going to attack you or not, he's throwing extra damage at you. So very fun, very fast to play these. So I thought this was a cool thing to include in here. Oh, look, there's a second copy. All right, next. Moving up into the 3-drop category here, and we've got a Mirror Guardian, a dwarf soldier. So again, keeping with my theme, dwarves and elves, dwarves and elves. This is a 4/2, which I thought was pretty great. Something that can do 4 damage and only costs you 3 to play is pretty sweet, but you can tell it's only 2 in toughness. So not the hardiest of cards, but it also has the ring tempts you ability on it, which is cool, and will give some extra gameplay with that ability. And now it's time for our friend Legolas. So this is, one of the key cards Bill wanted included in his deck. So Legolas, Master Archer. He only costs 3 to play. He is not that strong, only a 1, but he is very tough. He is 4 for toughness, but he's got reach, which is awesome. So anything that anybody's got flying that's playing against this deck, he's already got somebody that can do some damage against those flyers. And he's got the ability, whenever you cast a spell that targets Legolas, put a +1/+1 counter on him. So he is not that strong out of the gate, but has the potential to get very strong very quickly if you can keep him out on the board. Next in the 3 mana cost, I have a who do I have? I've got Glorfindel, Dauntless Rescuer, an Elf Noble. And this is a 3/2 that has, whenever you scry, choose 1, and Glorfindel Dauntless Rescuer gets +1/+1 until end of turn. She can either must be blocked this turn if able, or can't be blocked by more than 1 creature on combat this turn. So if we think about what that means, I'm sorry, struggling a little bit looking at this upside down. So this gives you the ability, it's somebody that's a 3/2, to, if somebody's got only one creature out on the other side of the board, or two creatures, and say they're small, you can force them to have to block in a way that benefits you, right? If having them only block with one thing because it's weaker than you and you're going to kill it, great. And if they've got two things, and especially if it's something that they're trying really hard to protect because it's got a key ability on it that they're generating all kinds of disastrous consequences with, it's in your best interest to have to make them come in with both of them, because when you block with two creatures, the person that is doing the attack gets to choose the order that the damage is resolved on the attackers. And so if you were blocking somebody and one of the things has an ability that you desperately want to get rid of, and it might be the weaker card out of the two things, you might choose to pick that off first and kill it. The other thing might live, but now it's given you the upper hand in terms of the gameplay with that. So pretty good stuff. All right, next, another 3-drop. I've got Heridim Spearmaster, and so this is a 2/3, and importantly has reach. This is a human, and you'll notice I do have some humans in here, and there is a reason for it, and we'll get to that in the conversation when it becomes appropriate. But it has, at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gets a +1/+0 till end of turn. So not only does he have reach, but he has the ability to pump somebody up for an attack, which is cool. And now it's the other key requirement for Bill's deck, and it's Gimli. Gimli, Mournful Avenger. I think I might actually have more than one version of a Gimli in here, but we'll see. I can't remember for sure. But so this version, Dwarf Warrior, obviously, and he's a legendary. Gimli has indestructible as long as 2 or more creatures died under combat this turn. So that means, he's a dwarf, so he's hardy, right? He's only a 3/2, but that indestructible ability, especially when other things are suffering consequences out on the board, is pretty cool. So whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on him. So again, he is sad that his counterparts are dying, but he is becoming stronger because he's channeling that grief, right? Pretty awesome. All right, our next one, moving up into the 4-drop slot, so it costs 4 to cast. I have Galadrim Guide. It's an elf scout, a 3/4. When it enters the battlefield, scry 2. Again, that scry ability is super important because it gives you the idea to take a sneak peek at what is coming next and position the cards accordingly. Another 4-drop, Dunedain Raiders. So another human ranger. This is a 4/4, so a 4/4 for 4 is pretty awesome, just saying. And it's got landfall, so that is a keyword that whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, if you don't control a ring bearer, the ring tempts you. So landfall, you will note in the game of Magic, landfall is used in a variety of ways. And so it is a specific keyword that talks about the trigger that happens. Something happens when land enters the battlefield. That something is not always the same. So somebody else might be playing a deck that has a landfall ability in it, and it doesn't mean it's going to function in the same way it does in this deck. So just something to keep in mind. All right, but so it's got that landfall ability, and it allows you to do that ring tempting, which is cool. So next I have another 4-drop, and this is a 3/3 for 4, so a little on the weaker side, but it is Celeborn the Wise, and whenever you attack with 1 or more elves, you get to scry 1. So just think about it. If we had all of those elves that we had out on the board, you could do a lot of scrying. Now granted, if you're not going to be shifting the cards, I have had instances where I get real excited because I get to scry multiple times based on what I attacked with. But if that first card on top is a card that you want and something that's happening doesn't allow you to draw that card, you're going to scry 4 times to look at the same card that you already know is on the top. So don't get too excited. Don't pull a Dawn. And so he also has, whenever you scry, he gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each card looked at while scrying this way. So again, if it's the same trigger that's not cycling cards through, it doesn't work as great as it sounds like it might work, but you can make this guy a lot stronger. And that's a permanent +1/+1. Next card, another 4-drop, is Bag End Porter, another dwarf. And whenever Bag End attacks, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. And if you've been paying attention, both Legolas and Gimli are legendary creatures, and there may be other legendary creatures in this deck that I've built as well. Next up, another 4-drop is Relentless Rorim. This is another human. He's a 4/3, and he has, whenever he enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. So you can see we'll get a lot of value in this deck on that ring tempt ability in terms of what it will allow the cards to do. See, do have another version of Gimli in here. All right, so this is another 4-drop Gimli, and he is a little tougher than our other one. He's a 4/3 with trample, and he has, whenever a creature or an opponent control dies, Gimli counter of kills deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. So that is extra damage that's getting through whenever damage is already getting through. And it's a shiny Gimli, right? And what did I always say? It's the rule of cool, right? So shiny always wins. All right, another 4-drop I have. Erkenbrand, Lord of Westfold. He is a 3/3 that has, whenever Lord of Westfold or another human enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control get +1 and +0 until end of turn. So he buffs everybody else out on the board temporarily, so that's nothing wrong with that. Next, we have got another 4-drop legendary creatures. So again, that will trigger based off of that other card's legendary ability if they're all on the board at the same time. And we've got Eomer, Marshal of Rohan. And this card has haste, which is cool, means it does not come out sick and can attack immediately after you bring it out on the board. Has, whenever one or more other attacking legendary creatures you control dies, untap all creatures you control, and after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. This ability triggers only once each turn. Excuse me? An extra combat turn on this phase? Why did I put this in Bill's deck again? Because I'm glutton for punishment. That's clearly why. Anyway, it's pretty cool. All right. This is why I had other humans in the deck, right? So again, going Dawn crazy with the theme. I know the expectation was Gimli and Legolas, but I couldn't not bring Strider into the game as well, since he carried the same color combo. So you can see he is a 4-drop. Another legendary creature, has the landfall trigger again. And so whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. And then if that creature's power 4 or greater, it gains first strike until end of turn. And so first strike means if somebody is blocking, the card doing the attacking is going to get their damage through first before any damage is dealt by the other person. So if somebody else blocked and they also were going to do 4 damage to this character, it wouldn't happen if my character killed that character first. So pretty cool. Another card here, we have up into the 5-drop cost now, and I've got Eomer of the Riddlemark. This is another legendary creature, so you can see we have a lot of legendary creatures going on, and it is a 5/4, which is awesome, with haste. And whenever Eomer attacks, if you control a creature with greater power among creatures on the battlefield, create a 1/1 human soldier token this turn. So he potentially can bring a friend with him when he comes out of the battlefield. Next, I have an Oliphant. I couldn't not put an Oliphant in here. And notice it's the beautiful full art borderless one. I love these cards. I think they automatically look amazing, and I want to run as many of them as I can in my decks. And it is a 6/4, so it's a toughie with trample, meaning if he does more damage than what somebody is defending with, whatever damage is not stopped there spills through onto your opponent. So pretty cool. Whenever another target creature you control gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. And it has mountain cycling. Let's talk about that for a second. Cycling in general refers to the ability for you to choose to bin a card in order to get a land. And this is super important early in the game when you deal your hand, and if you are land challenged early in the game, and especially if you're sitting with a couple very expensive cards in your hand, it may be well worth it to go, you know what, I'm gonna sack this card and get the land, because it can be a lifesaver, game changer for you, because you might choose to die an early death if you're gonna hang on to those really expensive cards at the expense of not having the land you need to do anything else functional, and your opponent runs away with the game. So pretty cool. So in this instance, it says mountain cycling, and that means you can bin this card to retrieve a mountain. So it's that specific type of land. Cycling in general doesn't mean you can just toss it and go get whatever you want. It's whatever the type of cycling involved here, and so it's red in this instance, so it's a mountain. Now we are moving over into sorceries and instants and enchantments. So first one I chose to include in here just costs 1 green, and it's many pairings. And isn't it beautiful? Another borderless. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle and create a food token. So there again is one of those tokens that allows you to sack it to gain 3 life. I have an Elven Farsight in here. So this says that scry 3, and then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature, draw a card. So this gives you the ability to not only see into the future, but if you position a creature on top of it, you can then draw it. So you can essentially draw more than 1 card on your turn if you play it right and or have the right cards lined up for yourself in there. Next up, I have a Ranger's Firebrand. It costs 1 red, and it deals 2 damage to any target, and the ring tempts you. So this is one of those quick and easy ways to either pick off an annoying card on the other side of the board, or even just do 2 damage directly to your opponent and trigger that ring tempting ability, which again gives nice buffs. So I've got 2 copies of that in here. Now we've got an artifact. So we've got the Mirror of Galadriel, and it only costs 2 to play, but its activated ability actually costs 5, but it's pretty cool. So you can pay 5 after this is out on the board to scry 1. So look at a card and then draw it. So again, you can basically kind of look at 2 cards, right? If you don't want the first card that you look at, you can put it on the bottom, and then you still get to draw a card. Or if you liked what you looked at, you can pick that up then too. And this ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. Again, synergy, 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 right? So all of those cards that I've included in the deck at this point character-wise, I have legendaries all over the place. So in theory, that ability that costs 5 might cost you little to nothing if you are smart and are able to keep those legendary creatures out on the board. So pretty neat stuff. Next is another artifact, Lumbus, right? Because we have to have some food in here. And so Lumbus is an artifact that allows you to scry 1 and draw a card when it comes in the battlefield, but it also has the ability for you to pay 2, sacrifice it to gain additional life. So again, that food when your life is challenged. So this might look familiar if you watched any of the other videos up to this point. So I included a copy of Lorien Brooch because we have multiples from the Buy a Box promo. And it is an equipment that has non-basic island walk. So this means if you attach this onto a creature and you are playing against somebody that is also playing more than monocolored deck, so if they have a non-basic land of any kind, so it could be an artifact land, it can be a dual colored land, but this would mean that damage would automatically get through and your opponent wouldn't be able to block. So pretty cool. Now, because I'm a nice person, I decided to include Glamdring in this deck. Can I tell you just for a minute that it is challenging to build a deck for somebody else when you know you have only maybe 1 copy of something. Like in this instance, I don't have another copy of Glamdring, and I'm putting it in Bill's deck. That means I'm a really nice person, right? So he better remember that when we're playing against each other, but he won't because he plays very cutthroat. I digress. Anyway, Glamdring. So this is an artifact equipment. It gives the creature that you attach it to first strike and +1/+0 for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. So this actually rewards you for the number of those that you've played up to this point for the things that you have in your graveyard. So pretty cool. Costs 3 to equip. Next thing I have in here is a friendly rivalry. Cost 2, target creature you control, and up to one other target legendary creature you control each deal damage equal to their power to a target creature you don't control. So this is how you can take care of a big threat on the other side of the board. Whether it's something big and stompy that you don't have anything big enough to get through, or maybe it's something in the air and you don't have anything to block flyers. It's a really great way to take care of a threat. Next, this is a 2-drop. I've got Gimli's Fury because, you know, theming. And it has target creature gets +3/+2 until end of turn. And if it's legendary, it also gains trample until end of turn. Not too shabby. Now I've got a copy of Smite the Deathless. And Smite the Deathless deals 3 damage to a target creature. And if that creature loses indestructible until end of turn. If that creature should die this turn, exile it instead. So again, some real problematic things out on the board. This could be a game changer to make sure damage gets through, especially if it's something that you just haven't been able to deal with up to that point. And it's shiny, right? Rule of cool. All right, next we've got Quarrel's End. And so it's a 3-drop, and as an additional cost to cast this, you have to discard a card. So this is choosing a card from your hand and discarding it. Draw 2 cards and create a 1/1 human soldier creature token. Next, I've got Sword of Arrows, and this is one of those things that I really like to include in case you need to take care of something that is a problem with flying. But I like this one because it has other abilities with it too. You can either destroy an artifact, an enchantment, or a creature with flying. And you get to look at the card at the top of your deck. Not too shabby. It's an elf deck, so I thought it only fitting that we include a bow. So I've got a Galadriel bow in here, and it has flash, meaning you can play it at any time as if it were an instant, as well as on your turn. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to a target creature you control and untap that creature. So that's where that flash part comes in real handy. So you can hold on to this, and if on your opponent's turn, like say they've got something with flying that you've not been able to deal with up until this point, and you have this in your hand, you can hold on to it, cast it as an instant. So you could have already attacked on your turn, meaning your guy would be tapped and ordinarily not able to block, but this would give you the ability to give him reach and untap it. So your opponent would unwittingly think they could get through with their flyer because that's what's been happening. And now you have something to take care of it, which is cool. Another beautiful full art card, I've got the Rising of the Day, and creatures you control have haste. This is an enchantment that stays permanently out on the board. So like I said, legendary creatures you control get +1/+0. So think of all those legendaries out there. It can become a problem real fast. Next, Gimli's Axe, because, you know, Gimli. And I do only have 1 copy of it in here, so the 2 Gimlis would have to fight over which one gets it. But the equipped creature gets +3/+0, which does not sound fun for me playing against this. But as long as equipped creature is legendary, it also has menace, meaning it has to be blocked by at least 2 creatures. And it costs 2 to equip. I have Elven Chorus. It costs 4 to cast it. It's an enchantment. And you may look at the top card of your library at any time, and you may cast creature spells from the top of your library. This is a game changer. So basically it's almost giving the ability to draw multiple cards on your turn if you have the mana available to play them. So that's pretty powerful. I have Gift of Strands, sorry. This has flash. You enchant your creature and it enters the battlefield. You get to scry 2 and it gives a creature +3/+3. Gross. All right, I thought this was cool just from a thematic approach. So this is a copy of The Ring Goes South. It triggers the Ring Tempts You ability, and then you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal X land cards, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. Put those land cards on the battlefield tapped, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I have Doors of Durin. So whenever you attack, scry 2. And then you may reveal a top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it on the battlefield tapped and attacking. And until your next turn, it gains trample if you control a dwarf and hexproof if you control an elf. Since this is both an elf and a dwarf deck, I have a feeling this card is going to be a problem, and I'm a super nice person for putting it in there. Just remember that. All right, this is a copy of Gruul Locket. So as I mentioned before, the color combo of red and green is Gruul, and this would be a card that you play that allows you to tap for mana. And you'll notice it has the second ability on it, which is kind of crazy. So for 1, 2, 3, 4 more of either red or green, it gives you the ability to use either. You can sacrifice it and draw 2 cards. So if at any point in a game, if you're really stuck not getting the things that you need, you can use that ability, which I think is pretty nice. And then I think the rest of these are just going to be lands. I didn't include all the basic lands that we're going to have to put in here. These are just a couple of the specialty ones that I had available. So this is a dual color. It enters the battlefield tapped, but it does give you the ability to use either red or green, and it's shiny. This one enters the battlefield tapped, but when it enters the battlefield, you gain a life. And I chose to include multiple copies of that one because running a dual colored land when you're running a dual colored deck is important to help you do that, regain that mana quickly for yourself. And if you're going to play something that's going to enter the battlefield tapped, you might as well at least gain a life for it. So there you have it. There is our Gimli and Legolas deck. What do you think? Do you think Bill's going to like it? Do you think I'm going to get my rear end handed to me when we play? I guess it's going to depend on what I build for myself, which I haven't decided yet. That will be next. So let me know your thoughts below. Have you been playing the set? What do you think of it? What do you like to play? Does this deck feel like it would be a fun deck to play? Do you think I made any fundamental wrong choices in here? Please let me know. I'm always looking to learn and do my builds better as we go as well. But until the next one, guys, play lots more Magic, and I will see you magical friends later.